Welcome to Edge Radio Community Corner, and we're going to be talking to Scotty from Scorpion Media, who has a documentary on some of the recent experiences that he's launching tomorrow at Subiaco. So I thought this was a great opportunity to get you in, get you talking about what's coming up, and find out a bit about who you are. Scotty, I first met you on a Freedom March, wandering around. There's this big American-sounding guy.
Yeah,
to be fair, could say that. Although he does sound a bit Scottish when he wants to. Standing with this big camera, recording everything, and I thought, how did he get there? Where did this Scorpion Media come from, and what was going through your head? And obviously, you probably got a lot of this in the documentary, but I thought you could maybe share more of the sort of personal journey from where you were to there to now.
Yep, great. It's great to be here, Stevie. Look, the documentary is really about. It's dedicated to the WA people, the Western Australian people who stood up and fought. Yeah. And how I sort of, came into seeing you down there on one of the rallies. Basically, look, you got to go back in time a little bit. And, I think we're sort of, a lot of us are awakened to this naturally. And if you go back to, there's a great speech by Aldous Huxley.
Aldous Huxley,
you know him, right? He was Aldous Huxley was George Orwell's teacher, hence 1984,
and he wrote Brave New World.
Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World, which was a sort of a softer version of this totalitarianism control. But he gave this speech right back in Berkeley, and he was talking. Huxley was talking about the 20% of the population that are readily hypnotized.
Okay.
20% of the population that are, they can't hypnotize them.
Have you ever been hypnotized?
I think not. I think I'm in that section of the population that cannot be hypnotized.
I was asked a hypnotist to stand up.
Yeah.
And got on the stage, and then he sent me away because there was nothing happening with me.
That's what they. Well, you're one of them. You're on that 20%, and then you got the other 60% in the middle. And if you look at the stats of how they pushed out these mandates. There were a lot of them were talking about we got to get 80%. Maybe they knew.
That's right.
And they've done a lot of studies on this shit over the years and pumping it out. So look, I think that.
So you were actually aware that the governments were thinking this sort of stuff in advance of this pandemic happening.
If you read history and you study this, let's say the conspiratorial elements,
angles, and
it just. Instantly, like as soon as I started rolling this stuff out, if you have any sense of history, getting away from the mainstream media, it just comes to you, and you go, man, I know what's happening.
So you've got a gut feel. You had a gut feel about it, probably because it was pretty educated.
Well, I would say so. Yeah. I'd say I'm somewhat educated. I'm things I'm good at, some I'm not.
So
you
had this gut feel, and.
Yeah.
Did you have a media company before this?
No. Look, I've been dabbling in the media business, some independent journalism.
Yep.
So going way back, I worked as a political lobbyist some 20 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. And it was, but for a specific group.
They
were the Montagnards. They were the hill tribes from Vietnam. The western side of Vietnam. We went to Geneva, Washington, Brussels, the European Parliament, and did political lobbying for this group of hill tribes. Interestingly enough, the particular group, most of the guys that I sort of affiliated with, we all live in North Carolina because they escaped Vietnam. But the interesting thing is they surrendered, the Vietnam War ended in 1975. So, April 1975, the North invades the South, Soviet-backed tank invasion, basically funded. And, they took over South Vietnam. The Montagnards had been recruited by the CIA and special forces during the war years.
Yep.
It goes back to the French times, even before. The first French colonial war. They always fought against the Vietnamese. They were mistreated. They were hill tribe peoples, and racism and that kind of thing.
Because political lobbyist,
sounds
instantly you go,
oh, money, big pharma, corporations.
So there is political lobbying on behalf of groups that actually need it.
Yeah,
and you were one of them.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, you could say people called you human rights activists, whatever.
Okay.
We often, we'd sense, collaborating directly. You had to be with Human Rights Watch, which then was, it was a very good organization. It was one of the few organizations that would speak out and publish stuff. So, we were involved with some senators, some European diplomats, but, I realized the insanity of going, how it was a facade, the human rights, the UN, the Washington, Brussels, all the globalist bullshit was, you condense it very, succinctly, a lot of it was bullshit. The human rights angle, the power of all these groups, a lot of it's just talk. But now, just getting back to those guys, they surrendered in 1993. So it was like 17 years after Vietnam fell in April of 75.
Yep.
So 1993 in Cambodia.
Yep.
These 400 guys were the last remaining ones still fighting the Vietnam War. And they had a battle with the Vietnamese government military in around 91. Something like that. So, this is, and these guys were covered, a lot of them had wounds, and, they had families and kids, and the U.S. flew them to North Carolina. And today in North Carolina, there's like somewhere, maybe 20,000 of them. Their ancestors keep coming, and a lot of repression going on. And, so I was awakened to politics and geopolitics. Mingled with, those days, got to meet a lot of old CIA guys that had morals and, Vietnam veterans from, all sides of the conflict, the Montagnard freedom movement, the Vietnamese freedom movement, like the French guys in Paris, did all this interesting and mixed with all these different groups that were involved in a lot of indigenous groups and seeking self-determination. And I've seen all kinds of crazy shit. The Vietnamese government actually called us a terrorist organization officially in the UN in 2002. Whoa. 2 years later, we defeated it. But, you saw the shenanigans of politics.
And so you took that perspective.
That was like a
you kind of came. And how long have you been in Western Australia?
I've been here like 30-something years.
30-something years.
Yeah. This was like a precursor to opening up some doors and windows in your brain. Yeah. To understand how the global world works.
It's like a realization. And once you've opened them, there's no going back.
That was one of those, moments of, and they're still suffering today, by the way, in Vietnam. And the government was cruel. They killed people. The Vietnamese government. They actually took the guy who's heading this organization in the U.S., the Montagnard Foundation. He saw his mother last in 1968. So around 2004, 2005, that time frame. There was protests in Vietnam. The Vietnamese government broke his mother's ribs. She was like in her 80s or something. So this is the level of, and in the media never pumped anything. No. They just kept it silent. Nobody really brought a few. There was a documentary I did for SBS called America's Forgotten Allies. But, people they wanted to bring Vietnam to the side of, away from China. There was Vietnamese containment. So nobody was
political agendas.
Political agendas.
Always ongoing.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. So that started. Yeah.
So in Western Australia in 2019, just before things happened, you weren't looking at being Scorpion Media.
No.
Is that right?
No, I did some docos. I wrote for a lot of independent, I basically
because you become pretty prominent. Your Scorpion Media work.
Well,
certainly, and I'm looking forward to seeing this on Wednesday night. I think it's going to be incredible because it seems to me that they are training the public to be like goldfish, and they're struggling to remember what's going on. And I think that's because they saw how well it rolled out the last time, and okay, it did wake a lot of people up, but they're probably going to try and do that again. It ties in with their agendas really nicely. People make a lot of money. They manage to hoodwink governments, control governments, use all their little powers behind the throne to get what they want. But this documentary hopefully is a testament that people can revisit and refresh their memories.
Yeah, hopefully that's definitely one of the goals. It's also dedication to the people in WA who actually stood up.
Yeah.
You know, we had rallies with, there was reports of maybe 30 to 60,000 people at a rally.
Yeah, that big one.
I mean,
that
it was
huge.
the biggest one since the
well.
Vietnam War, maybe bigger than ever in West Australia's history. You know, the entire Forest Place was covered. The Bell Straits up there. They were all, people were everywhere, you know, and we saw a lot of, you saw people come up, and the film captures a lot of impromptu speeches from people that just suddenly popped up out of nowhere. They were there on the day, and they got up and they said things, and they're powerful.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so many of it. And
it's reality, isn't it? This is what really happened. This is the real people who were there. Yeah. Nothing staged, nothing scripted. It's all completely as it was.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so you know, it's a timeline.
So what made you pick up a camera? Just because you had that experience?
I've been shooting stuff for a long
time.
I've done docos. Like, you've got another YouTube channel, Tribal Action Group.
So you just got your stuff out and said, I'm going to record this.
Yeah, look, what else? Why not? I just felt, intuitively, get out there, capture it. Capture the moment, capture this piece of history. So it's basically a history document dedicated to the people who stood up.
Yep.
They're the subject matter. 80% of the film is, stuff shot on the streets of Western Australia. Around, and special thanks to shout out to Topolini's restaurant.
Yep.
You may know them. They're featured in the film. Jody and Mel, the gals. Jody and Mel
stood up.
Huh?
Stood up. Everybody should have bloody stood up. Yeah. But they did. And they copped a bit of attention.
They're still doing stuff. And they're organizing this, so it's great stuff. And there's Aaron Malloy. You might know. You heard of that guy? Yeah.
Where's he again?
Where is he? He's slacking off somewhere, probably.
Through there.
Yeah. Well, I told this story many times. I might as well tell it again. First time I saw him was he's standing outside Dumbass House.
Yep.
Down near Kings Park. And they were outside there. They're chanting at the premiere. And there's some mainstream media guys there.
Yep. And,
I got him on camera. And these are the spin doctors, ladies and gentlemen. Look at them or something.
So that was the first time you met Aaron?
Well, it was the first time I recall seeing him. And and he was having a go at him. And everybody just started screaming, yelling, abusing the mainstream media.
Oh, as they should.
The legacy media, it opens up people's eyes now. They're dying.
Well, they are. Yeah. Although,
if not dead.
Although it's nice to be involved with some genuine alternative media, not alternative mainstream media, because alternative mainstream media is just the next wave of controlled media.
Yeah, you have to be careful with everything out there, whether to deliberate.
But there's no one controlling Aaron. That's not happening.
Maybe.
That's not happening.
No, we're independent, right?
Exactly, purely independent. Stands up, says what he thinks, and actually, hats off, Aaron. I thought you did a magnificent job comparing and hosting and speaking at all of these events. It was actually a sight to behold.
He's
very inspirational.
Yeah, he's in the film. Can't miss him.
No.
Yeah. And
so you've released this documentary. We're going to be watching it on Wednesday at Subiaco. So there will be information that will be sent out alongside this, assured by Aaron, so that everybody will know where it is if they want to go along. A little donation at the door, sort of thing. But how do you feel about capturing all of that, then releasing it now, and what do you think's happening now? Because these people haven't gone away. These people aren't behind bars. These people haven't seen justice. These people are effectively still in power. In many, many respects. How do you feel and see things as we sit today?
I think a lot of people are a little bit more hopeful. Especially with the Trump effect. We'll see. You know, you know the history repeats itself. It's just ongoing. I think you got a long march ahead, like how the commies and the socialists and the Marxists did. You know, they had that, you know, the idea of, the long march or whatever. We're going to have to do the same thing. You know, is it going to come to an order? Yeah, people talk about Nuremberg coming back or something. You know, look, I wouldn't count on it. And I think we just have to stand up, and it's going to be constantly fighting back against the globalist agendas, and they're rolling them out. You know, I mean, if you think about it, Alex Jones was ranting about these things, you know, 20, 30 years ago. Now you look at it and you go, I mean, people say, you know, well, shit, you know, Alex Jones was right. You know, I mean, these are people that were never interested, but, you know, met a lot of people like that, you know, who go, shit, you know, he's a wild man, but
yes, a bit.
He's just slightly. But
although I have a very good friend who was a very, very senior lawyer in the UK. I'm not going to name him, and he was the one who.
Oh, come on.
No, I can't do that. Yeah. I can't do that because he wants to keep his head under the battlements. He doesn't want to get it blown off. You know, some people like to stay in the background. Me, I'm quite happy to stand up because I believe we have to stand up for our kids. Yeah. We can't be shy about this. Yeah. We have to stand up and set an example.
Kids died from the jab. I mean, you can look on there, find testimony, 7 and 9-year-old died of a heart attacks after getting the jab. Yeah. Senator Alex Antic asked it in the Senate estimate hearings. I think it was in 23. I mean, you think about this. They kill kids. They got
unbelievable state-sponsored executioners in white coats to jab poison into children. Yeah, that's how I look at this.
Yeah, it was insane, wasn't it? Yeah.
And one of my son's friends plays football, and unfortunately, he got the jab. And there was a time there where he would run onto the football pitch. Oh, I'm desperate to play, clutching his chest, coming off. Yeah. And when you see that in someone that you know, and you realize that's why it was.
Yeah.
You feel like being able to hand out some summary justice all of your own. Yeah, if you could catch the people who are actually directly responsible for it. That's how you feel.
So much of that. You know, a story of hope. You know, we have turns. People are not switching so blind.
Yes. And it was the blindfold. The blindfold was pretty good. I mean, back in the 80s, they had very limited television and very limited information. They could control it. And then gradually the internet, you know, there's a bit of freedom of information, although they're not liking that so much now. But they're tightening the screws. But at the same time, when they pushed this, some of the stuff was so bloody ludicrous, it couldn't help but make people, hang on, that cannot be right. It was, and I think if you looked at things and you looked at the information objectively, you know, surgeons' masks, and what an absolute joke.
Yeah. I mean, the masks didn't work. They weren't terrible for kids. And the studies that came out, like it was the Cochrane review, which said that, I think they examined at least 12 reports. No, no benefit, especially for kids, and certainly for kids. But, you know what they did here in WA? They had shared classes. The year 2s didn't have to wear a mask, but the year 3 did. You know, this is the insanity. You know, and here's another one. Do you remember and she's still in power. I think it's Spurrier, the chief health officer from South Australia. I think she's
so there's still one of them still.
Apparently she's still in power. But remember she did that famous, infamous quote: "Don't touch that football. Oh, if that football comes at you, just don't touch that football."
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it. I didn't realize that's who it was. Yeah, I remember it. Remember it well. Yes.
They still got her in power in South Australia. So you got to think that the political class is something pretty insane. But I think we have to change that now. And you see the Port Hedland stuff.
Yeah, which is great. The Port Hedland stuff's great.
Yeah. Joondalup just did something.
And for those of you who don't know, the Port Hedland, the local council put out information to every single elected member of parliament, elected representative, to all political parties, saying that it's quite obvious that the evidence is clear. These need to be withdrawn immediately. And that's the recommendation.
And also that they were contaminated.
So, with DNA.
Residual DNA contamination. Yeah, so just the other day, the Joondalup one, Robin from Coverage is the Cure and Cafe Lockdown, they just broadcasted one this morning of the Joondalup guys who went and approached the council. You know, and so it's happening around.
Pressure's happening.
You know, yeah, and
but at the same time as it's happening, what worries me a little bit, quite a bit, in Australia, the new rollout of legislation that's going to clamp down on free speech, that's going to create this hate speech mandatory sentences. We better not do any old salutes to Emperor Caligula or Nero or any of that, because it could be interpreted as a Nazi salute. And guess what? You're in jail for 6 years or some nonsense. So we're looking at a tightening of the screws at the same time as we're seeing a bit more noise being made by the public and people challenging them. So there's two forces at work. There's the forces of repression and tyranny, and there's the forces of freedom. And it's great that, you know, you're out there on the forces of freedom, creating documentaries, filming things, putting down a statement for history saying, here is the experience that we've had. One of the biggest things for me is that serves a warning for everyone, that we have to try and make bloody sure they never get away with that crap again. Yeah.
Well, that warning was what Orwell said, you know, his famous quote of, you know, if you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. And he said, you know, it's up to you to...
don't let it happen.
Don't let it happen.
Don't let it happen. I think we even go back to ancient Greece, and the price of freedom is a vigilant population. I can't remember who said it. Could be Aristotle or somebody. But you know, they recognize then that the citizens who make up the population, who have a voice, have to stand up and be politically engaged. Because if they're not,
the element from Greece, you know, the birthplace of democracy. Yeah, we seem to have lost it now. I mean, you know, do we really have a democracy? You know,
I think we've got a nice...
We've got democratic ideas, but, you know...
Do you believe in the Uni Party?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
no, I believe... Well, you know,
So I'll just explain what the concept of a Uni Party is, that most political systems in the West have been set up with two primary parties in opposition to each other. And these parties attract popular votes, and people feel that they're making a difference if they vote one in, vote one out. But the reality is that there's a bureaucracy that sits behind things, and there's agendas that all these people have signed up to. They are controlled. There's organizations such as the Friends of Israel that you are encouraged to be if you wish to become, for example, a member of parliament in the UK. And something like 87+% of members of parliament in the UK are all part of this group. You try and tell me that they don't have some influence on what happens. And it's across both parties. So, you make a vote, and there's a little bit of semantics that change.
It's Coke and Pepsi, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And
ultimately, but I don't think it was planned out that way. People go, oh, what are you talking about? We have democracy.
It may not have been,
it has certainly evolved into that.
Yes, you know, but that's what they do. That's what they did with Greenpeace. Greenpeace started. It had some great people involved, and they hijack it, take it over, and bend it to twist it to serve their interests.
Money corrupts, power corrupts.
Absolutely, power corrupts, absolutely. And they seem to have that.
It's like, you know, Senator Malcolm Roberts said recently,
brilliant guy.
Yeah,
brilliant guy.
Very good man.
Yes.
He said, he quoted, he said in a speech, you know, that all these policies that, you know, the zero way, you know, the net zero and a lot of these were started by the liberals and then ramped up by Labor. They won't, and we can see.
And the same with the repression of freedom of speech legislation.
Yeah.
Oh, it was first put out by the liberals.
Yeah, and then
it's like they're not going to save anyone when they come in.
Bill, and it's and that's the
it's the direction of government. It's almost what government does. Government wants to increase its size, increase its importance, and increase its level of control over everyone.
Yeah, and who's behind it? The corporations, the corporate class. Now, interesting. Just to talk about the government, there's another great quote. Now, he is an established politician.
Okay,
Ronald Reagan.
Reagan. That's what we used to call him back in the 80s.
I mean, but he did have look.
He did some great speeches.
He had a great speech, and you know, the one is about government. the 9 greatest, the 9 most fearful words in the English language. I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Yes. Yes, that was it. Yeah. Do you know what government means?
Government? Well, you mean like
etymologically?
No. Well,
it comes from governare, which is Latin.
Latin,
for to control.
To control.
And mentis, the mind.
Control the mind.
Isn't that interesting?
It's just that's a coincidence. Come on, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Yes, man. I know. But did you know that coincidence
is like MK Ultra?
It's
no,
yeah. But just did you know that coincidence was one of the leading causes of death last year?
Coinciditis.
Coinciditis.
Yeah, you get coinciditis, and well, people, you can still go on the government website now and see myocarditis and. The government websites.
Right. My wife is pregnant, and we went down to the hospital. Thank you, mate. Cheers. Appreciate it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love being a dad. It's the best job in the world.
Yeah.
It comes with responsibilities, though, and one of them is to try and leave the world in a better place for them, and by speaking out and doing whatever I can do to make the place a little bit better.
Yeah.
But we're sitting in the waiting room, and do you know what they're pushing on the telly?
The flu vaccine.
The flu vaccines and the COVID vaccines.
Yeah, I don't think
for pregnant women. For pregnant women, we know what the mRNA does.
Yeah.
And they're pushing it in. I had to sit there. I wanted to rip the screen off and smash the crap out of it. And having done stuff like that historically, I was very close to doing it. But I just thought, oh, no, I better not.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to, because I know I'd get in real big trouble for that, because I wasn't going to get away with that right in front of everyone, was I?
It's very corrupt. But, on the good side, William Bay won his case. The doctor who, Queensland, right? He said, stood up and they sacked him. The APRA.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
APRA got hammered in the courts. And the Supreme Court said, you're free to practice. So they lied. So basically, the medical profession here was controlled.
The professional body was completely controlled and told lies that led to harm.
They did. And they committed. And they probably have to, one day, when they pass on, they have to face reality.
Well, let's hope that karma does the job that the court system and stuff is not really doing here. Because let's face it, it's not really doing that job. We've got court cases in America that have been set up by Dr. David Martin, has all of the evidence, everything. Yeah. He just needs a prosecutor, watertight case. The evidence is all there in their own words, in emails and communiques. It's all there. And none of the attorney generals states will take it on because they're all controlled.
But some of the states are suing Pfizer, aren't they?
They're suing Pfizer, but that's a little bit different to actually going and charging these people with the serious crimes that this is.
Rand Paul involved?
Yeah. I'm not sure, but it's like there's this huge edifice and we're all chipping away at it. But wouldn't it be nice to see some people like even, and I know that obviously there's a bit more noise about Fauci and stuff now.
The devil himself.
But wouldn't it be great to see some of these people actually made an example of?
Yeah. Brought to justice, yeah.
Do you know, the lawyer who told me before COVID was going to happen, before COVID happened, that it was going to happen in some shape or form, and told me this is the agenda, this, and I was like, yeah, okay. He said a lot of true things to me before, but did I necessarily believe that was 100%?
Yeah.
But I was very alert to it. And when I saw it coming, I was like, oh my goodness, he was right. But he had a very interesting perspective on all of these things. I've lost my train of thought. God, it was really, really good. Yep. The lawyer, it'll come back to me. But however, that was one of the reasons. I was already anticipating that there was going to be a problem. And as soon as the sniffles happened in China.
We instinctively, we knew. And it came true. Basically, the conspiracy, it came true. Big Pharma lied about everything.
Have you seen Pauline Hanson's Please Explain when they've got Albert Bourla on with the puberty blockers?
No, I haven't.
Oh, mate, it's hilarious. Yeah. What are we promoting now? More vaccines? No, we've got puberty blockers. It's a massive market. You've got to flog these to the kids.
They were saying, and I think they're going to go down. Ed Dowd was the BlackRock. You know him?
Yeah, met him. I went to his thing.
Yeah, well, I interviewed him down
Fantastic.
here in Perth.
Nice.
And he said, that Australia was a unique case.
Because they didn't have COVID.
Yeah. And he said the numbers were like, I think it was 2020, they were below the excess deaths. So the number of deaths per year was they're a bit lower.
Mm.
Then it went up in 21, and then 22 it went up to like 14%. So, and you can find on their testimony,
Which cannot happen naturally ever.
How does suddenly
means there's a massive thing.
If you say to someone, the actuary reports say that we had 20,000 excess deaths in 22, right? And a lot of these people are saying, well, that's because they died of COVID. And they go, no. When you find out it wasn't COVID.
Yeah, because the lethal COVID was the first COVID. There was no excess deaths during that time. None.
It was crazy. It was all bullshit.
I've just remembered what it was he used to say.
Yeah.
Obviously you like Pink Floyd?
Pink Floyd, yeah. Well, I remember them from. Yeah, I remember them. Yeah.
Well, Animals. Their albums and stuff. Very awake band. Apparently, they really understand things. Yes.
So. Yeah.
And it's a bit of the Animal Farm thing. And my lawyer friend used to say to me, Stephen, the pigs control the dogs, or use the dogs to control the people.
Oh yeah.
All you see is the dogs. The real bad guys, you never know who they are. You never see who they are. And I was like, well, how do you fight against something you don't see?
Yeah, the hidden hand.
And he would sort of say, well, there's no point going straight for this guy who's right at the front of it. He's the front man because he's just one of the dogs.
The messenger.
And I'm just like, well,
enforcers, yeah.
If you make it uncomfortable enough to be a dog, then maybe people wouldn't want to be dogs so quick. So maybe we should just... Anyway, that was my thought. Like, how can you fight against this unseen, hidden force?
It's via the security forces, the police. They use these things,
mechanisms to crush us. Yeah, I mean, we saw it we were fortunate.
But we had police that stood up.
We were fortunate, and we did.
Nothing was as bad as Melbourne. And
mate, if we'd been in Melbourne,
people overseas know about it. If you go overseas and you talk about it, they will tell you about. They saw
the rubber bullets in Australia. The rubber bullets. The old lady getting pepper sprayed.
The pepper spray.
The mounted police.
Yeah.
And here we were very fortunate.
They arrested the woman, a pregnant woman, for putting a Facebook post up.
Yeah, that's right. Going into her house.
That is the worst case of totalitarianism you can get. That's secret police.
It's beyond the wildest dreams of the Gestapo.
Yeah. Well, I think they would have done that.
Oh, they maybe fantasized about that, but they didn't have the technology to do it.
Yeah.
That was
certainly their tactics in their playbook.
But it all kind of came out. We were lucky here that things were pretty peaceful. There wasn't too much in the way of physical repression and people getting face down in the concrete sort of stuff. It didn't happen so much here.
Yeah, it happened a few times.
Yeah,
there's a couple. I've seen people tasered. I tasered a veteran, 7 years as a combat veteran.
Really?
And he got tasered on Escort. Yeah, they tasered him, pepper sprayed him. And no warning. I believe they didn't even give a warning for that we're going to pepper spray, taser you or whatever. And they just did it. And it's on video. I think it was probably at least 7 or 8 people that were filming it.
Right. Wow.
So they had the charges. They arrested. They had charges dropped.
Yeah.
Think of but a lot of good cops. A lot of cops said we don't agree. And behind the scenes, there's a lot of moms out there who had children in there, sons in the police force.
Mm.
And, when they had a huge, and apparently, these jobs now they're having recruitment problems.
So many have left the force.
Yeah.
They're really, really struggling.
Yeah, and just remember that Ben Falconer made a great statement down there. He quoted the old, "It's immoral for Australians to obey,
immoral
laws." Yeah, I get.
Yeah, absolutely. He stood up. He stood up and he said, Great stuff.
And there's another police officer now who said no.
But they still shafted him.
He's
they still shafted him, didn't they?
Yeah, they shafted him. Yeah, but we hopefully get now. Lance French is running the Liberal Party.
Okay,
he's up in I don't know the district actually, but he was one of those coppers with and hopefully he gets in. I mean, he's running. He's on the ticket. Apparently,
Well, it would be really nice to see some difference made from within the system, because I know that there's a lot of honest people out there who are trying to make a difference within the system. But it just seems that with the best will in the world, nothing really significant eventuates.
Yeah, well, it's going to be that slow thing. Now, I've got to tell you a little story of hope.
Yeah, good, because we need hope.
Yeah, it is. And it was like 4 years ago, 2020, 21. When the mandates first hit, I was at the very beginning. Another friend of mine, named Vince. Anyway, we were sitting in a cafe and that we used to go to. I lost my job, got sacked, blah blah blah. Anyway,
was that due to
the jab,
not taking the vaccine?
Not taking it. Yeah.
So you went
no. Yeah.
I'm not taking it.
Yeah, the legal center sacked me. Unbelievable. And the so this we mentioned it to this lady, and then about 6 months ago, roughly around that time, this same lady who we had said many times beforehand, that against the jab, she said, I thought you and Vince were cracked, meaning
not cases.
And and she says, and now I've come to realize that you were right all along. And she basically has two children, adult children, who got heart problems. And most people now, there's still people that resist.
There are, but I think they actually did a study on who's for and against the mRNA jabs, and in Australia now there's more people against them than there is for them.
That's good,
and that is a massive sea change compared to how it was, because right at the start, people who resisted probably felt really, really alone, because it seemed that everybody was going along with it. Conformity. But that's the way they presented it. The reality wasn't that. But that's the way they presented it. And it hoodwinks you into feeling that you're alone and that there's more fear in you. That it's all part of the way that the psychological operation is being dictated.
Fear, I think it was long identified.
I mean, in England, 1 in 3 people never got it.
Yeah, Serbia?
Yes, actually.
Hats off to the people of Serbia.
Hats off to the people of Serbia. Do you know
20% apparently got it. Roughly and something's 80% of the people said stuff you.
Yeah.
They said Pishka Matana.
Can I give you a shout out to Dianella White Eagles Football Club, because I was playing in Bassendean Caledonian, and I've been there for maybe 8 or 9 years or whatever it was. And when the nonsense came in from our Premier McGowan, I couldn't get a beer with my teammates after the game. I couldn't even stand in the licensed area. I was ushered off like a leper over there. And I'm like, what? Because I'm not vaccinated. Oh, well, you know the rules. But I said, no, mate, you know what? It's not my job to know the rules. And I had a couple of stand-up fallouts where I slammed my fists on the table and then ended up walking out because I felt disgusted at the way I was being treated.
Yeah.
But at the same time, then I went and I took my kids to Dianella White Eagles, where all the Serbians are in the Serbian club. And they said, oh, how you going, Stevie? I was like, oh, yeah, I'm doing all right. And they said, oh, you want a beer? I was like, oh, what, am I allowed one here? Like, what are you talking about? I said, oh, well, I'm not vaccinated. They said, fuck that shit.
Come here.
God bless you, Serbia. I'll get you one. And almost nobody at that club got one.
And almost nobody. Though? But I told
because they're aware of the corruption of the West, based on the fact that the West bombed the crap out of them in Belgrade.
Not only that
might
but
help.
also communism.
Yes. So
if once you experience communism, you don't trust the government.
You can't. Yeah.
And it's the same thing here. These guys are basically, if you look at a lot of this Labour Party people, I mean, they're basic. They're not particularly that smart.
No, they're not.
History they don't know, and they're sort of almost in mentality of communists, like.
To be fair, you look at the people who push all this stuff, and you look at the apparent IQ level, and you go, why would anybody follow these people? Because they're not that clever.
Yeah.
They're not quick in their feet. They can't handle debates. All they can do is trot out what's been programmed into them.
You know Gerald Celente? He's from New York, and he's got the Trends Journal. He made it interesting. Why? How can people take orders from these pieces of shit?
Yeah, it's true.
But he was, and he writes a great paper. The Trends Journal. But
so we've been talking a lot about Western Australia, but there has been some global events. Trump won.
JFK,
which is
being
interesting.
released.
JFK is.
Have we got time?
We've got 10 minutes.
Have we got 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, look, I want to
I'm quite curious because we've got all this stuff's been released. And look, I am not a believer in saviors. I really am not.
No.
But you've been studying some of the stuff that's being released because there's a whole heap of stuff that's been declassified on the assassination attempt, or the successful assassination of John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, his head was blown up on camera. They've got it on video, so the video didn't lie, really. Maybe they doctored it. There's some talk about that. Look, I'd just like to have a little chat about it because, it's a bit of a test for myself and everything because I studied it for a couple of years, just as got nothing else better to do. So why not look at the JFK stuff? It's the granddaddy conspiracy theory of them all.
Yeah.
But and they've had all this release of information. And from day one, it was a debacle. But so I just want to summarize it all up for people a little bit. There was the Oliver Stone film was very, very good.
Yeah.
But, it's old now. And information came out since. Mm-hmm. So I would say basically Oswald, sort of a test. Let's see what happens. Because if they release everything, I mean, I doubt if there's going to be a smoking gun. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting information that they can't hide, and apparently it's tons of it. You know how this goes? It's probably tens of thousands of documents, and maybe they're redacted. Maybe they've been already scrubbed.
Yeah, okay.
So maybe they even throw us a wild card in there where they sexed them up and that it's like, well, there was nothing anyway. Who knows? They might try some trick. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if they get the real stuff, I think you're going to find out that Oswald never killed anybody on that day. Mm-hmm. Oswald did not shoot a gun on that day.
Yep.
Him getting out of where things went wrong for the plotters was he got out of the book depository alive. That wasn't supposed to happen. I believe, and overall, it goes back a little bit. You have to go back at the Cold War, the military industrial complex. Eisenhower's famous.
He's
warning.
His
warning to the public. Yeah, but what happened was that military industrial complex had, and it goes with England as well. So the post World War II world order was set by England and America primarily.
Yes.
We had the Soviet Union in there and China and things like that. But and he was going to destroy that entire Cold War strategy
edifice. Yeah, and he was stopping the wars, which is instantly going to smack them in the pockets, which they didn't want to happen, did they?
He was ending the wars. He had a direct line to Khrushchev. This affects Gladio, the stay-behind armies that they had all over Europe.
Yep.
It's not mentioned that much in connection to JFK, but I think a lot of these things, he was going to end. He wasn't going to push the Vietnam War.
Yep.
All these things come together in the military. The guys, Alan Dulles and the Bay of Pigs guys, were super pissed. Mm-hmm. This was a big failure for them. The Bay of Pigs, which was.
The CIA
Cuba.
invasion of Cuba that was funded by flooding their own cities with cocaine. Well, these people will do anything for their agenda. They don't care about anybody.
No, they definitely wanted Castro gone.
Yeah,
and they tried this. And when that failed, you got to put it in perspective that 53,
and of course the reason it failed was because
it's
the
connected to the
Kennedys
air support.
refused to go for it.
Yeah. And they were supposed to have another invasion after. There's some debate about a lot of these things. You know, that the little sometimes you get caught up with the facts. You know about because they needed these planes that for a successful invasion they needed air support. These planes to come over and bomb these positions, and they couldn't get all the planes when they tried to bomb before, and they were supposed to. But anyway, we're getting, you don't want to nitpick over the things. Kennedy refused to go ahead with the full invasion.
Yes.
Even if the air support wasn't there. And this pissed those guys out. So Dulles gets sacked. The top 3 guys get sacked on the CIA. Dulles was the longest running CIA director, civilian from the early days.
Right.
And he'd been there for over a decade, I believe, so these guys, get kicked out of power. Now you got to put in perspective that 53, they had the Iran, they kicked out Mossadegh.
Yep.
The CIA did that.
Yep.
It was Kermit Roosevelt.
With the Shah.
They installed the Shah. The British went to the Americans and said, hey, can you guys do this? And it was about oil. There was,
of course,
there was oil was certainly a factor in that.
Massively.
But, they got rid of that. Then in 54, you had this, Guatemala overthrow, Arbenz, and PB's success was CIA overthrow. And you had all these things happening. So when the 60s come along, you can go back to I think it was the 48 Italian election, the first one.
Okay. And
in 48.
This is when they basically installed all the mafiosa in Sicily and
they had all these right-wing groups. Italy took the most of Gladio. I mean a large percentage of it. And they had every country in Europe had stay behind armies of assassins, and they were planting bombs. So you plant a bomb. Let's say Bologna,
as did Ukraine. Funnily enough,
It's a playbook that the British and Americans have been doing. The Anglo-American establishment. You blow up a train station in Bologna. I forget how many people got killed. I think it's over 80. Talking to a guy here from Bologna the other day. Actually.
So these are false flag events.
Yeah, the right-wing guys plant the bombs. They blame it on the communists. Yeah. Everybody votes for whoever they want. So that was the 40. So when Kennedy blocks this, he makes an enemy. He's considered a national security threat. Yes,
right.
So this is I'm compiling a lot of information from people that the experts, James D. Eugenio, did a lot on this, and Jefferson Morley came out of the Washington Post. He's a very good guy. These guys, you just look at the facts, and so they pulled off this hit. The Bay of Pigs guys, the nexus between them all, of all the usual suspects in this, is that they're all connected to the Bay of Pigs. They do have a connection there.
Gotcha.
Of the operational team, the funders could be something else, and people in the back. Pushing could be. There's probably other elements to it.
Yeah, well,
Johnson is involved.
Yeah, for 100%.
Certainly in the cover up.
There's an interview with a lady who spoke to him when he came out of a meeting with the Alan Dulles of this world.
She says, Kennedys will never bother me again.
They'll never embarrass me. or humiliate me again.
Yeah.
And this is not a fantasy. Whether this is happening from tomorrow, they'll never do it again.
Yeah. That's what they say. And that was a meeting held in in Texas.
Yeah.
And JFK was. LBJ Johnson was an animal. And I'm quoting Richard Nixon on that.
Yeah.
Who off mic gave an interview once, and he was criticized. They were talking about a book that was written about Johnson.
Yep.
And they were describing him as and Nixon says something. The book described him as an animal. Something like that. And then he thought he had a hot mic. And he says, and he goes, but of course, he was. It's a great, anyway, he was a thug. He had a hitman, Malcolm Wallace.
Yeah. So there's the mob, there's the military industrial complex, there's the Bay of Pigs. Yeah, man.
Now,
he made a lot of enemies.
So the connection between all these guys, to understand from a novice, if you want to get started researching this, is that it's not just the mafia. Okay.
I
think there's like 24, 25 families maybe in the US of mafia. It's not the 5 families in New York.
Gotcha.
It's the ones connected to the Bay of Pigs. So the Miami guys, Chicago, Louisiana, the nexus is the same. Those mafia guys that were involved in the overthrow of Castro. It's the CIA guys that are involved in the overthrow of Castro. It's the military guys that are involved in the overthrow of Castro. So that's probably the operational guys.
And the mob probably had a big interest in Cuba because before Castro came in, they controlled it.
It was those guys that had the interest in that. So they were part of an asset team called Operation 40. It was all of an asset team. So all they did was they moved one of their hits that they did overseas, pull the team in and say, hey, do it on you. And it was the third one. It was the third. There was an attempt in Miami earlier. And a few weeks before that one, there was one in Chicago.
So they had already tried to kill him.
So
they'd already tried to kill him.
It was the third one.
Wow, I had no idea. But look, we've come to the end of our pretty much to the end of our time, Scott.
Yeah. So Oswald didn't do it. There might have been other funders besides the CIA, but operational guys was Alan Dulles and his little gang of Bay of Pigs guys. And Oswald was innocent. He was a spy. You got to remember, Oswald was a spy, mole hunting. That's why he went to Russia. And he came back, and they didn't arrest him. They gave him money.
Okay.
So when you put these things together,
so this is the prediction of kind of what's going to come out.
Yeah,
I just find the timing interesting. I find that they're trying to distract the crap out of us.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm wondering if this Project Stargate really truly is global slavery with the friendly face of Elon Musk on it. But
could be.
That's my prediction. Scott, it's been great to talk to you because, right, I mean, we've shared a couple of words before.
We did.
But you're a fascinating guy. I wanted to get you on the radio station because I wanted people to know who you were, get a sense for you. There's an event tomorrow, and all the information is going to get put up on the screen on a post. Thank you very much for coming to Edge Radio. It's been an absolute blast.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll do this again.
Yeah. Cheers, man.